Sri Padmansini Korela, currently pursuing my engineering degree in information technology. We are diving into JavaScript, especially objects, functions, and modules, which are core concepts for any developer. First, let's talk about objects in JavaScript. Objects are the collections of properties where each property is a key value pair. They are fundamental building blocks in JavaScript, allowing you to store and manage data. Now, how to create, access, and manipulate objects? Creating objects can be done using object literals. The simplest and most commonly used way to create an object is using curly braces to define key value pairs. So now look into the example and understand. The second way is using new object constructor. You can use the new object constructor to create an empty object and add properties dynamically. This creates an empty object and assigns properties, brand, and model using constructor function. A constructor function allows you to create and multiple objects with similar properties. Here, the student is the constructor function and student 1 and student 2 are the instances of it. Now, how to access object properties? Using two methods, dot notation and bracket notation. Dot notation is used by the property name. In bracket notations, we use square brackets with property name as string. Now, getting into how to manipulate the objects. Adding new properties. Add new properties to an object using dot or bracket notation. Look into the example. Modifying existing properties. Modify an existing property by reassigning its value. Now, deleting the properties. Use the delete operator to remove a property. Please look into the example to understand. The fourth method is iterating over the properties. Use the for in loop to iterate through an object's properties. And now, getting into the functions. Explain functions in JavaScript. What are the functions and why are they important? Functions are reusable blocks of code designed to perform a specific task. They are defined once and can be executed whenever needed, which makes coding more efficient and organized. What are the key features of functions? Let's look into it. Code reusability, modularity, readability, scalability, and drive principle. What is code reusability? Write once, use multiple times. Modularity. Break a program into smaller and manageable pieces. Readability. Makes code easier to understand and debug. Scalability. Helps handle complex programs by dividing them into functions. Drive principle. Avoids repetition. Following the don't repeat yourself rule. Look into the example to understand more. And now, demonstrate different ways to declare functions, function declarations, expressions, and arrow functions. Now, let's look into the function declaration. What's the definition of function declaration? A traditional way to define a named function. These functions are hoisted, meaning they can be called before the definition in the code. In function declaration, it is commonly used when the function needs to be reused in the multiple places. Look into the example to understand more. Coming to function expression, a function is assigned to a variable. This function can be named or anonymous. These functions are not hoisted, so they cannot be used before the definition. These are commonly used when the functions needs to assign to a variable placed as an argument or used conditionally. Look into the example to understand more. Now coming to arrow function. This is introduced in ES6. It provides a concise syntax to define functions. It does not bind into its own, making it useful in callbacks and functional programming. What is the usage of arrow functions? Ideal for shorter functions, callbacks, or when this binding is not needed. Look into the example. Now, what is the concept of this in different function contexts? Let's look into it. The first one is global context. This refers to the global object like Windows in browsers and global in Node.js. You know what is Node.js? The framework which is used in the server side of JavaScript. And the second one, inside a regular function. This refers to an object that calls the function. Inside a method, this refers to the object the method belongs to. Arrow function. This is lexically inherited from its surrounding scope. That means its surrounding scope. Look into the example. The first one is constructor function. This refers to the newly created object. What is the difference between var, let, and const? Var, scope, function scoped, and not block scoped. Hoisting, hoisted and initialized to undefined. Redeclaration is allowed and reassignment is also allowed. It is used in old JavaScript and using in the modern code. Look into the example. And coming to let, it is a block scoped, hoisted but not initialized, not allowed in the same scope. Coming to const, blocked scope, hoisted but not initialized, not allowed in the same scope, not allowed, immutable reference. Usage, used for constants or variables that should not change. So it is named as const, which means constant. Discuss scoping rules and hoisting behavior. So what are the scoping rules? Scoping determines the accessibility of variables. Coming to function scope with var. Variables declared with var are scoped to the nearest function. They ignore block scope. Look into the example. Now coming to block scope with let and const. Variables declared with let and const are scoped to the nearest block. Look into the example. Now coming to hoisting behavior. Hoisting moves declarations to the top of the scope. Where hoisting? Hoisted and initialized at to undefined. Now what are JavaScript modules? Code organization and reusability. Modules break large code bases into smaller, manageable files, improving readability and reusability. What is the example for this? Exporting utility functions from one module for use across the app. Now, encapsulation. Modules keep variables and functions private by default, avoiding naming conflict in the global space. Improved maintenance. Easier to maintain and debug as modules are self-contained. Dependency management. Important only what is needed, reducing unnecessary dependencies. Tree shaking. Modern bundlers eliminate unused code during the build process, reducing file size. Now, how to use ES6 modules import and export. Export allows exporting multiple items from a module. This is called named export. Default export allows exporting in a single default value. Look into the example to understand more. Import. Use import to bring exported items into another file. Please look into the example to understand more. So that's that's the concepts of objects, functions, and modules in the JavaScript. I hope you understood well. Thank you.